At 78 years old, my own son sat me down at my kitchen table, slid a stack of papers in front of me, told me it was just some bank stuff to lower my property taxes, and by the time I understood what I'd really put my name on, my house wasn't mine anymore, and the two people who took it had no idea what was already coming for them. Before I get into all of it, I just want to say thank you for sitting here with an old man. It means more than you know. Do me a favor and drop your city down in the comments. I read every single one, and I'll give you a shout out. And if a story like this is worth a minute of your time, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. It's a small thing, but it's the thing that keeps me able to keep talking to you folks. Okay, so let me back up and start at the front of it. Because if I just tell you the ending, you're gonna think I made the whole thing up. My name's Ray. I'm 78. I live in Parma, Ohio, just south of Cleveland, in a little brick house on Wareham Road that me and my wife Carol bought back in 1976. $200 and change a month it cost us then. And I remember standing in the empty living room the day we got the keys, thinking I would never in my life be able to pay that off. 40 years at the stamping plant off Brook Park. 40 years of my hands smelling like cutting oil no matter how hard I scrubbed them. And we did it. We paid it off. Burned the mortgage papers in a coffee can in the backyard in 2004, and Carol made a pot roast and we invited the whole street. That house was the one thing in this world that was mine, free and clear, dirt to shingles. Carol passed 2 years ago. A stroke in the kitchen on a Tuesday morning while I was out getting the oil changed. I've never forgiven myself for not being home, even though every doctor tells me it wouldn't have mattered. After that, the house got real quiet. I kept her reading glasses on the windowsill. Still do. I got one kid, Dale. He's 46 now, and I want you to understand. I love that boy. I raised him to throw a curveball and to shake a man's hand and look him in the eye when he did it. But somewhere along the line, Dale got it in his head that a regular life wasn't good enough. Always chasing the bigger thing. New truck every 3 years. Boat he used twice. Timeshare in Myrtle Beach he still complains about. Dale sells industrial HVAC systems, and he does all right, but all right was never enough for him. And it sure was never enough for the woman he married. Megan, that's the wife. Number 2, I should say, because Dale's first wife, Kathy, was a sweetheart, and I don't know what he was thinking letting her go. But Megan, where do I even start? She came into the picture about 8 years back, and from day one she looked at my house the way a real estate lady looks at it, doing the math behind her eyes. Everything with her was appearances. What kind of countertops you have? What people would think, is this us? First time she came over for dinner, she asked me right at the table, "So, Ray, have you thought about what happens to the house someday?" I was still cutting my meatloaf. I said someday I'll be dead and it won't be my problem. She laughed like I made a joke. I wasn't making a joke. There's one more person you need to know about, and she's the reason any of this turned out the way it did. My granddaughter, Emma. She's Dale's girl from Kathy, 24 now, in her last year of nursing school over at Cuyahoga Community. Megan never had much use for Emma, being a stepkid and all, kind of froze her out of things, and so Emma and me, we got close. She'd come by Sundays, we'd watch the Browns lose, she'd do her flashcards at my table, and I'd quiz her on the names of bones. Emma's got a good heart, and it turns out a real good memory. Hold on to that. So here's how it started. It was March. Cold, gray. That Cleveland March where the snows turned brown and everybody's mean. Dale calls me up, real friendly. "Hey, Dad, me and Megan want to come by Saturday. We've been worried about you. Want to make sure you're set up right for the future." Now, I'm no fool, but I'm also a lonely old man whose son suddenly wants to spend a Saturday with him, And a part of me, the soft part, the stupid part, just went, oh, good, he cares. They show up with a box of donuts from Rudy's in a folder. Megan's got that folder tucked under her arm like it's the most natural thing in the world. We sit at the kitchen table, the same table Carol picked out in 1981, and Dale starts talking about how property taxes in Cuyahoga County are going through the roof, which, true, they are. And he says there's a program, some kind of senior tax relief refinance thing his buddy at the bank set up, where they restructure how the house is held and it drops what I owe the county. Saves me a couple grand a year. And I said, Dale, I don't owe a mortgage. The house is paid off. And he goes, exactly, Dad. That's why this works. It's just paperwork. It's practically free money. We'd be crazy not to. Megan opens the folder. And I'll be honest with you, and this is the part that eats at me at night, I didn't read it. There were maybe 6 pages, small print, and Megan's got her finger already on the signature lines with little sticky arrows on them. And Dale's pouring me coffee, and there's a fella there I didn't know, some young guy Megan called her cousin, Chad. And Chad's got a notary stamp and a briefcase, and he's very official, and everybody's smiling. And I'm sitting there thinking, my boy came all the way out here to save his old man some money. So I signed. 3-4 spots. My name, Raymond, that Carol always said I signed too fast, like I was mad at the pen. Chad stamped everything. Megan scooped it all back into the folder before the ink was hardly dry. They ate my donuts, told me they loved me, and they left. That was a Saturday. The following Wednesday, I'm out front getting the mail, and there's a woman in a blazer walking up my driveway with an iPad, real cheerful. And she says, hi, I'm here to take the interior photos. Is now a good time? And I said, photos of what? And she looks at her iPad, and she looks at me, and she goes, the listing, the property at this address. It's going up Friday. I want you to sit with that for a second. Some stranger standing in my driveway telling me my house is going up for sale on Friday. The house with Carol's glasses on the windowsill. My legs went to water. I honestly thought I was having Carol's stroke. I said there must be a mistake. This is my house. And she pulls up the record right there on her little screen and turns it around to show me, and there it is, the county auditor's page, and where it should say Raymond. My name, it says a company, some LLC, and I couldn't even read the letters, they were swimming so bad. I told her to get off my property. I think I was pretty ugly about it. She left, and here's where, if I'm being honest, most fellas my age would have just laid down and cried. And I did cry that night, sitting in the dark with the phone in my lap. But somewhere around 2 in the morning, something else moved into me, and it wasn't sadness. My whole life, people underestimated me because I talked slow, and I got grease under my nails. My whole career, I fixed the machines the engineers with the college degrees couldn't figure out. And I sat there in the dark and I thought, no, sir, not this. Not the house I paid for with my hands. You want a war with a boring old man? You have no idea what you just started. So the first thing I did, and this is important, I did not call Dale. Every instinct I had said, pick up the phone and scream at your boy. I didn't, because I knew the second I let on that I knew they'd close ranks and move fast. So I played possum. Dale calls me Thursday, all sweet. Hey, Dad, how you feeling? Everything good over there? And I put on the shakiest, most confused old man voice I could find. I said, oh, I get muddled. I can't remember if I ate lunch. And he goes, Dad, don't worry about a thing. Me and Megan are taking care of everything for you. And I said, okay, son, whatever you think is best, you're smarter than me about these things. I could practically hear him grinning through the phone. He bought it. They both bought it. Poor, confused Grandpa Ray doesn't even know what day it is. Good. Let them think that. Friday morning, I called Emma before her clinicals. I said, "Honey, I need you, and don't tell your dad." She was at my door in 40 minutes still in her scrubs. I told her everything, and I watched her face go from confused to white to something hard I'd never seen on her before. And she said, "Grandpa, I was there." "What do you mean you were there?" She said, "Grandpa, 3 weeks ago, Megan asked me for a favor. She had Emma dig through some old boxes in Dale's garage looking for my Social Security card, my old plant pension statements, a copy of my will. Megan told Emma it was for the tax program to help Grandpa. Emma didn't think twice. She's a good kid, she didn't know. But here's the thing about my granddaughter. She takes pictures of everything. Nursing student, she photographs her notes, her schedules, all of it. And when she found my documents in that garage, she snapped a picture of the whole pile spread out on the workbench, just to remember where she put things back. And in that photo, sitting right there next to my Social Security card, was a document, a quitclaim deed, blank, waiting. 3 weeks before they ever sat me down with donuts, they already had the deed printed out. That, folks, was the moment I stopped feeling sorry for myself, because that photo had a date on it, and that date proved this was planned. Next thing I did, Monday morning, I put on my good jacket, the one I wear to funerals, and Emma drove me downtown to the Cuyahoga County Recorder's office, and I pulled the record on my own house. Cost me a couple bucks a page. And there it was, a quitclaim deed, dated that Saturday, transferring my property from Raymond, sole owner, to Megan's LLC for the grand sum of $1. $1. My whole life, everything Carol and I built, for $1 and a box of donuts, and notarized by Chad, Megan's cousin Chad. Now, I didn't know a lot about the law, but I knew a fellow who did. My neighbor 2 doors down, Stan, retired 30 years off the Cleveland PD. We play cards Thursdays. I brought the papers to Stan, and Stan put his glasses on and read it slow. And when he was done, he took the glasses off and he looked at me, and he said, "Ray, this isn't a family squabble. This is elder financial abuse, and I'd bet my pension there's fraud in that notary." He said, "You need a real lawyer, a good one, an elder law attorney, and you need her yesterday." Stan knew somebody, a woman named Linda Vasquez, does elder law over in Independence, sharp as a tack, and she saw me that same week because Stan called in a favor. And I sat in her office, and I laid it all out, and she listened, and then she started asking questions that told me she'd seen this exact thing 100 times. She said, "Mr. Ray, did anyone read these documents aloud to you?" "No." "Did anyone tell you the word quitclaim or the word deed?" "No, they said bank papers, taxes." "Were you given copies to keep?" "No, Megan took them all." "Was there a notary present who properly identified you and witnessed you signing?" And I said, "Well, there was Chad." And Linda's pen stopped. She said, "The notary is the transferee's cousin." And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And Linda Vasquez smiled the way a cat smiles at a bird. She said, "Mr. Ray, in the state of Ohio, a notary cannot notarize a document in which their own family has a direct financial interest." She said, "That's not a technicality. That's the whole ballgame." Here's the part where it started to snowball. And this is where you're going to want to stick with me, because it gets good. Linda files what's called a lis pendens on the property. Fancy Latin. All it means is a public notice that says this house is in a legal fight. Nobody can buy it or sell it until this is settled, which meant that fancy listing Megan put up Friday. Dead. Frozen. And Megan did not take that well. Because, see, Megan already had a buyer. She'd already spent the money in her head. She'd been telling people, her book club, her Facebook, that they were coming into a second property, that they were expanding the portfolio. She'd already picked out a lake place in Geneva on the Lake she was going to flip my house to pay for. And now, out of nowhere, it's all locked up, and she can't figure out why. And I'm still over here playing muddled old confused Ray who can't remember if he ate lunch. So Megan comes over, alone this time. No Dale, no donuts, and her whole soft act is gone. She's got that tight little smile on. She sits at Carol's table and she says, "Ray, there's been a filing on the house, some kind of legal hold. Do you know anything about that?" And I looked at her real blank and I said, "Filing? On what house?" "This house." And I watched her decide I was too dumb to have done it. Big mistake. She says, "Ray, I'm gonna be straight with you. This house is too much for you. All these stairs. What if you fell? Dale and I think it's time you looked at some nice communities. There's a lovely place in Strongsville. They do bingo." And she slides a brochure across the table. A brochure for a home. And she says, "We'll handle the house. That's what family does. You don't need to worry your head about it." And I said real slow, so I'd go live in Strongsville and do bingo, and you'd have the house. And she said we'd have the house, we'd take care of it, it stays in the family. And I said, "And where would Carol's glasses go?" And she looked at me like I'd lost my mind. And she said, "Ray, Carol's gone. They're just glasses. I want you to understand. Up till that second, I was angry. After that second, I was something colder than angry." I smiled at her and I said, "You're right, honey. They're just glasses. Let me think about the bingo place." And she left happy, thinking she'd won. That was the day I decided I wasn't just going to get my house back. I was going to do it in front of everybody. Now the escalation, because it kept climbing. Linda's digging, and she pulls Chad's notary records, and it turns out Chad the cousin isn't just sloppy. Chad's been running a little side hustle, notarizing all kinds of transfers he shouldn't be. His commission's tied to a title outfit that's already got 2 complaints against it with the Ohio Secretary of State. So now, it's not just my case. Linda makes a couple calls and the Secretary of State's office opens a look into Chad. Chad, who I met one time, who ate my donuts, and then it climbs again. Linda has me get a letter from my doctor, Dr. Osei, who I've seen for 15 years, and she asks him plainly, was Raymond of sound mind to understand a property transfer in March? And Doc Osei writes back, Ray's sharp as anybody, but nobody explained to him that these were deed transfer documents, and a reasonable person relying on a trusted son's description of tax papers would not have understood he was signing away his home. In writing, on letterhead, and then the receipts, the real ones, the ones that ended it. Emma, my granddaughter. Remember I told you to hold on to her memory. Emma still had Megan's text messages. All of them, from back when Megan was buttering her up to go through my garage, and Linda's face when she read those texts. Megan had written in her own thumbs, "Get the SS card and the pension stuff. Don't tell your dad the details yet. And if Grandpa asks, just say it's for taxes. Don't tell your dad the details yet." Megan was hiding it from her own husband. Dale, my Dale, didn't even fully know what he was part of. His wife had played him too. And there was one more, because it turns out when Chad notarized my signature that Saturday, at one point I got up to use the bathroom. My prostate at 78 has opinions, and Emma had come by that same afternoon to drop off soup, and she was in the driveway, and through the screen door, she heard Megan say to Chad, "Just stamp it, he's not gonna read it, look at him." And Emma, God bless her, had her phone in her hand. And she was recording a voice memo for her clinical notes. She does it all the time. And it caught it. Megan's voice. "He's not gonna read it. Look at him. Look at him." Like I was already furniture. So now we had the deed. We had the $1. We had the fraudulent notary who was family to the buyer, which voids it flat. We had the doctor's letter. We had the blank deed photographed 3 weeks early, proving it was planned. We had Megan's texts hiding it from her own husband, and we had Megan's own voice saying he's not going to read it. Look at him. Linda said in 30 years she'd rarely had a cleaner case. She said, "Mr. Ray, we can settle this quiet with a demand letter. They'll cave, you'll have your house back in a month and nobody has to know. Or," and she paused, "or we let them dig in, we let them lie, and we lay it all out in a deposition with everybody in the room. It's slower and it's harder on you." But, and she let it hang there. And I thought about Carol's glasses. And I said, "Linda, set the table. I want everybody there. Now I need to slow down and tell you about the reckoning proper, because this is what you came for." Linda sends the demand. Not a settlement, an ambush. She names it all in the letter: the deed, the dollar, Chad, the Secretary of State inquiry, the doctor, the texts, and she requests they all appear for depositions. And Megan, cornered, does what people like Megan always do. She doubles down. She hires some slick lawyer from downtown, and she decides she's gonna go in there and swear up and down that Grandpa Ray knew exactly what he was signing, that it was all his idea, that they were doing him a favor, that he's just confused now because he's old, and it's sad, but that's how it is. The depositions at Linda's office. Long conference table. Court reporter with her little machine, and they're all there. Megan in a blazer she thinks makes her look trustworthy. Chad, sweating, already lawyered up separate because his own lawyer told him he's got bigger problems than this house. And Dale. My son Dale, who I hadn't spoken to in 3 weeks, sitting there next to his wife, not looking at me, jaw tight. And I could see he still thought this was about a confused old man and a misunderstanding, because that's all Megan had told him. Megan goes first. Slick lawyer walks her through it. Oh, Ray understood completely. Oh, it was Ray's idea for the tax savings. Oh, we've only ever tried to help him. It's been so hard watching his memory go. She's good. She's real good. She dabs her eye, and Dale's nodding along beside her because he loves her, and he believes her. Then it's Linda's turn, and Linda, real polite, real soft, says, "Megan, I just want to make sure I understand. You're testifying that Raymond knowingly signed a quitclaim deed, transferring his paid-off home to your company for $1. Yes, and that this was properly notarized by an impartial notary. Yes, and Chad, the notary, he's your first cousin, correct?" And Megan's slick lawyer jumps in, but the answer's already on record from the county. Yes. And then Linda opens a folder of her own, and she slides the photograph across the table. The one Emma took, the blank quitclaim deed, dated 3 weeks before the donuts. And she says, "Megan, can you explain why this deed was printed and sitting in your husband's garage 3 weeks before the tax meeting?" Megan doesn't have anything. Her mouth opens. Nothing comes out. And Linda slides the next thing, the texts. "Get the card. Don't tell your dad the details yet. Just say it's for taxes." And she reads them out loud, slow, in that quiet office. And I watched my son Dale read those words upside down across the table. "Don't tell your dad the details yet." And I watched him turn and look at his wife for the first time like he was seeing a stranger. But Linda wasn't done. She said, "Megan, one more thing." And she set a little recorder on the table. And she pressed play. And Megan's own voice filled that room. "Just stamp it. He's not going to read it. Look at him." Nobody moved. The court reporter stopped typing, and Dale, my boy, put his hand over his mouth, and Megan's slick lawyer leaned back like a man who just realized he wasn't getting paid enough. And then Dale did the thing I'll remember till I'm in the ground next to Carol. He stood up. He didn't yell. He just stood up, and his voice cracked. And he said, "You told me he wanted this. You told me he asked us." And Megan said his name, Dale, in that voice, that managing voice. And he put his hand up, flat, stop. And he said, 3 weeks. The deed was in my garage 3 weeks. You had me pouring my dad coffee while you robbed him. And Megan, cornered, finally showed everybody who she was because she snapped, "Oh, grow up, Dale. He's 78. He was going to leave it to us anyway. I just moved up the timeline." And there it was, out loud, on the record, in front of the court reporter and her little machine. Here's how it all came down. The deed got voided. Judge didn't even need to think hard about it. A fraudulent notarization by an interested party, a $1 transfer from a man who was lied to about what he was signing. It was gone, wiped. The house went back into my name where it always belonged, free and clear, dirt to shingles. Linda got the LLC dissolved. Chad. Oh, Chad. The Secretary of State pulled his notary commission. And because there were those other complaints, the whole title outfit he worked for got shut down. And there's a criminal referral I'm told is still working its way through. And last I heard, Chad's driving for one of those grocery delivery apps, ate my donuts and lost his whole living. I don't feel bad. Megan. The county prosecutor's office looked at everything, the planning, the texts, the recording, and they weren't kind about it. Elder financial exploitation is a felony in Ohio, and they don't play with it the way they used to. She took a plea to keep from doing real time, but she's got a record now, and restitution, and a probation officer, and every single person in that book club and on that Facebook knows exactly what she did to a 78-year-old man. Because these things get around in Parma. The lake house in Geneva on the lake, the one she was going to flip my house to buy, never happened. She lost the one thing she wanted most, which was to be the kind of woman who has 2 houses. Turns out you don't get the second house by stealing it from the first man dumb enough to trust you. And Dale. That's the hard one. Dale filed for divorce before the ink was dry on the deposition. He showed up at my door about a week after, and he stood on my porch, my grown son, and he cried like he was 6 years old again. And he said, "Dad, I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know all of it." And I believe him. I do. But I also told him the truth, which is that he didn't know because he didn't want to know, because he wanted the money too. And he let a woman treat his father like furniture because it was easier. That's on him, and he knows it. We're rebuilding. Slow. He comes by Sundays now. Him and Emma both. We watch the Browns lose. It's not what it was. But it's honest now, and honest is worth more than easy. And me. I'm still here, in my little brick house on Wareham Road. I sat in Carol's chair the night the house came back to me, and I breathed out for what felt like the first time in months, and the house was quiet again. But it was my quiet. You know what I mean? The good kind. The kind that's yours. Carol's glasses are still on the windowsill. They're not going anywhere. Neither am I. So here's what I want to leave you with, and then I'll let you go. I spent my whole life being the guy people talked slow to. Grease under my nails. Didn't go to college. Signs his name too fast. And the people who took me for a fool, they weren't wrong that I was too trusting. That's true, I'll own that. But being trusting isn't the same as being weak, and being old isn't the same as being done. The ones who look at a quiet old man and think there's nothing behind the eyes, they're the ones who never see it coming. If somebody ever slides papers across your table and tells you not to read them, that not reading them is the favor, You read every single word, even if it's your own son pouring the coffee, especially then. Love is real, but love doesn't ask you to sign blind. And if you're one of the folks out there who feels invisible now, who feels like the world already put you on the shelf, I want you to hear me. You are not furniture. You built something. You get to keep it. And anybody who forgot that about you, well, you just remind them, thanks for sitting with me. Go hug somebody who's getting old and read the papers.